Planet out of the system. Chapter 1. You're no longer a planet. When the International Astronomical Union decided that Pluto was no longer a planet, Earth was thrown into a storm of outrage. Some accepted it as a fact, while others vented their fury on social media, declaring that Pluto is a planet in our hearts. But far away, billions of miles from Earth, on Pluto itself, the Plutonians were living their peaceful lives, unaware that someone out there had stripped them of their planetary status. This peaceful routine was interrupted when a spaceship named Degradation landed on Pluto. The Plutonians gathered around, assuming that the Earthlings had come to express their admiration for the greatness of their planet. From the spaceship emerged three figures: the sarcastic Dr. Johnny Walker, the ever-smiling diplomat Mary Poppins, and Robot Billy, who was utterly devoid of humor. The Plutonian leader, Plutix, greeted them with a warm smile. "Welcome to Pluto. What have we done to deserve the honor of your visit?" Johnny, suppressing a sigh, replied, "We're here to inform you that your Pluto is no longer a planet." Plutix froze, and Johnny, shrugging, added, "Well, it doesn't meet our new standards. Nothing personal, just science." Mary tried to soften the blow. "This doesn't diminish the greatness of your world. It's just based on objective data." Plutix, hiding his frustration, invited them to discuss the matter in the main hall, struggling to understand how the Earthlings could strip Pluto of its status. Chapter 2. Let's discuss this. When the Earth delegation entered the Plutonians' main hall, they were struck by the interior. Walls glowing with a soft greenish light, and melodic orbs floating in the air. Mary Poppins, usually calm, felt a slight unease. Plutix took his seat at the center of the hall, surrounded by advisors who watched the Earthlings with suspicion. Johnny, Mary, and Billy sat across from them, feeling the weight of dozens of eyes on them. "So," Plutix began, barely hiding his irritation, "why did you decide that Pluto is no longer a planet?" Dr. Johnny began to explain. "On Earth, we revised the criteria for planets. Now, a planet must be large enough to be round, orbit a star, and clear its orbit of other objects. Pluto doesn't meet the last criterion. Its orbit overlaps with Neptune's." Plutix stared at Johnny as if he had just declared that gravity no longer worked. "You think our Pluto isn't good enough just because its orbit overlaps with another? That's ridiculous." Mary quickly stepped in. "It's just a technical matter. Our decision has nothing to do with your achievements or Pluto's significance." Robot Billy chimed in. "Facts are facts. Pluto is no longer a planet. This decision is based on scientific data, not emotions." Plutix frowned even more deeply, and his advisors began whispering among themselves. "You Earthlings seem very sure of your right to decide for others," he said coldly. "Our Pluto has always been a planet, and we're not going to give up that status because of your new criteria." Mary tried to change the tone of the conversation. "We don't want to impose our opinion on you. We just wanted to discuss this with you." Plutix, clearly irritated, waved his hand. "Discuss? You've already decided for us. This isn't a discussion, it's a decree." Johnny tried to smooth things over. "We came here with peaceful intentions. We want to understand your point of view and find a compromise." Plutix slowly nodded, but his face remained cold. "Very well. If you want to discuss this, then pass our trials. If you succeed, we'll consider your proposal." Johnny, unsure of what to expect, agreed. Mary nodded, though there was a hint of worry in her eyes. Robot Billy simply stood, awaiting orders. Plutix rose and declared, "Then let's begin. But be warned, our trials aren't as simple as they might seem." Chapter 3. Pluto's Trials. After Plutix's words, the Earthlings found themselves on a strange open-air platform, surrounded by shimmering, crystalline structures. Plutonians gathered around, eager to watch how the Earthlings would fare in their trials. The first trial, gravity testing, one of the Plutonian leaders announced, as if already anticipating the Earthlings' failure. The Earthlings stepped onto a platform that began to spin and vibrate. At first, it seemed harmless, but then the rotation sped up. Johnny felt as if his stomach was ready to leave his body. Mary struggled to keep her balance, and Robot Billy, as usual, stood still, like a statue. The Plutonians watched with interest, some even betting on who would fall first. However, despite their comical attempts to stay upright, no one fell. "That was just the beginning," Plutix declared with a sly smile. "Now prepare for the comet parade." The Earthlings watched in surprise as small, icy comets appeared out of nowhere, zooming straight at them. Johnny barely dodged them. Mary ran in circles, covering her head, and Robot Billy stoically caught the comets, as if that was his job. "This is madness!" Johnny shouted as one of the comets whizzed past his head. "For us, this is normal," Plutix replied calmly. After several minutes of chaos, the comets finally stopped, leaving the Earthlings exhausted and drained. "Well, how do you like our trials?" Plutix asked with obvious pleasure. Johnny, breathing heavily, tried to respond, but was interrupted by the approving cheers of the Plutonians. "We understand that for you, this isn't just a game," Johnny said, finally catching his breath. "But these trials don't prove that Pluto is a planet." Plutix frowned. "To us, these trials are a symbol of our strength and resilience. If Pluto can't be a planet by your criteria, then we'll show you that our traditions and history justify that title." The Earthlings realized that they were facing not only a scientific problem, but also a cultural one. Plutix and his people weren't about to give up their pride without a fight. Johnny understood that logic and facts wouldn't work here, and he decided to find another approach, though he didn't yet know what it would be. Chapter 4. Young Strategist. While the adults were busy defending their honor, two Plutonian teenagers, Plucus and Plucus, decided it was time to get involved. These two were known on Pluto as the most curious and restless teenagers, always meddling in the affairs of adults. Their ingenuity and endless questions had stumped even the most seasoned scientists. Plucus and Plucus caught up with the Earthlings during a short break between trials. Johnny and Mary were sitting on the edge of the platform, trying to recover from the latest round of comic challenges, while Robot Billy was, as usual, occupied with his internal computations, completely ignoring the surrounding chaos. "Hey, Earthlings!" Plucus called out, approaching with a wide grin. "Can we ask you a few questions?" Johnny, slightly surprised by the teenagers' sudden appearance, nodded. "Sure, go ahead." Plucus, holding a strange device that seemed to record their conversation, asked the first question. "Why do you think you have the right to decide who's a planet and who's not?" Johnny froze, not expecting such a direct question. He opened his mouth to respond, but the words got stuck in his throat. "How do you explain to kids that a decision made by scientists on a distant planet affects everyone in the solar system?" "Well, you see," he began, but was quickly interrupted by Plucus. "If you're so smart, why do you still have problems with climate change on Earth? Maybe you should focus on that instead of who's a planet." Mary Poppins, who had been silent until now, smiled at the teenagers. "We're trying to solve our problems. But science isn't just about fixing one issue. It's about finding the truth in all areas." "Finding the truth?" Plucus repeated skeptically. "And you think the truth is that our Pluto is no longer a planet? That sounds more like an insult." Johnny felt his brain starting to overheat. These kids, with their simple yet sharp questions, were throwing him off balance. "We don't want to insult you or your people. We just want you to know that our decision is based on data and facts." Plucus looked at his friend and smirked. "Or maybe facts are just an excuse not to admit that you're wrong?" Mary couldn't help but smile. These kids were truly smart. Their questions made you think. "You know, maybe you're right. Sometimes we get so caught up in science that we forget there are real living beings behind the numbers and facts." Plucus nodded. "Exactly. And we're not going to accept being called anything less than a planet. Pluto was and still is a planet to us, and to everyone who respects us." Johnny and Mary exchanged glances. The simple words of the Plutonian teenagers made them reconsider. Perhaps it wasn't just about scientific classification. For these beings, Pluto meant much more than just a celestial body. "We'll take that into account," Johnny replied, realizing that the mission was becoming more complicated than he had thought. "Thank you for opening our eyes to another side of the issue." Plucus and Plucus, satisfied with their work, left, leaving the Earthlings deep in thought. These were not just teenagers. They were future leaders of Pluto, who already understood that their planet was not just a physical place, but a symbol of pride and identity. Chapter 5. A New Star. After their encounter with the Plutonian teenagers, the Earth delegation realized that their mission needed rethinking. In the center of the main hall, before Plutix and his advisors, Johnny presented a new proposal. We understand that our scientific approach didn't take into account your feelings and traditions, so we offer a compromise. On Earth, Pluto will be called a dwarf planet, recognizing its uniqueness, and you can maintain its status as a planet according to your criteria. Plutix pondered this, then slowly nodded. That is acceptable. Your acknowledgement of our significance is important to us, Mary added. Furthermore, we propose to establish scientific cooperation between our worlds, so we can better understand each other. A smile appeared on Plutix's face. Let this be a new beginning for our planets. The Earthlings and Plutonians exchanged gestures of friendship, concluding the conflict with mutual respect and understanding. The end. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to our channel and don't forget to hit the like button. Thank you for your attention.